Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we're discussing the latest entry in the Pokemon saga, Pokemon Legends Arceus. And without further ado, let's look at the big successes and huge pitfalls of this brand new Pokemon game. So as some of you probably know, Pokemon Legends Arceus came out over the weekend, and there's been a kind of dichotomy in the fan base as to this game. A lot of people are touting it as one of the best experiences in the Pokemon world, that they're really enjoying it, and others have some gripes with the game. So I kind of want to go into depth about that, discussing the story, the aesthetics, and the gameplay to really try and give as much as possible a fair representation of the game. So first, let's start with the story. Now, I think the story had some really good elements. Firstly, the relatively unique introduction to a Pokemon game was really fun. You know, it went straight into the meat of the story, and whilst it was reminiscent of other entries, it wasn't exactly the same, especially that first scene with Arceus instead of the Professor. That was quite well done to kind of set up the story going forward. Though this game does have a legacy to uphold for those Colosseum and Gale of Darkness fans, especially because the game kind of follows along the same route in terms of how it's trying to innovate the franchise. Saying that, it does feel distinct. The fact that you're an expeditioner alongside the Galactic team is really fun, and it's a kind of sly nod to the fact that this time you're on the team rather than fighting a team as you do in most other Pokemon games. Interestingly, however, and I think a lot of people have noticed this, is the relaxation of certain topics. Pokemon has always had a kind of implication of darker, nefarious things. You know, Drifloon carrying away children, which is actually referenced in this game as well, and, you know, Drowsy eating people's dreams and so on and so forth. But this time, there's almost very brazenly a lot of mention of death, especially the player's death within the first few cutscenes, the first hour of gameplay. And I'm wondering if that's maybe to prepare the player for the fact that they are going to also be attacked by Pokemon as well. But yeah, it is quite interesting. This tone is very different to other Pokemon games. You feel as if you are in the frontier world because it's live or die at points, almost. It's really fun as well to go back to history, which obviously is, as we know it, Sinnoh, and the links that it has to modern games as well. You know, there's references to Galar, there's references to Hoenn, but also they manage to kind of make you feel like you're still within the Sinnoh region, especially from Diamond and Pearl, by having characters who are recognizable almost instantly. Celine comes to mind, so does Volo, who looks startlingly similar to Cynthia. And yeah, generally I think the ideas of the story are quite fun and quite on the nose, but also quite enjoyable at the same time. There are some bad points to the story, however, and not necessarily the story itself, but more the delivery of said story. For example, the insistence on explaining all the minutiae of the Pokemon series is something that's been a problem for me with Pokemon games for quite a while. That first initial hour, or maybe even 2 hours, where you're dealing with all the exposition and the you must use B to run and all that type of stuff, is still strong here. And frankly, sometimes you feel like you're moving from cutscene to cutscene at times, which isn't really the desire for an open world game, right? The fact that we still don't have an option for veterans to kind of circumvent a lot of this is disappointing, if I'm honest with you. I know that these games are always made to entice a new audience pretty much every time that they come out, but I think this needs to change. I think, you know, unlike when they started with Gen 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4, they now have legacy fans as well as new fans. They want to feel acknowledged within the Pokemon world as well. That needs to change eventually, but sadly it's not in this game. Continuing on the point of cutscenes, within those cutscenes there's a lot of repetition within dialogue, a lot of repetition of player names and what you should do next, and the insistence upon adding that you've fallen out the sky to every single sentence. And that was kind of annoying at times because it felt like it was bogging you down in story that wasn't necessary or lines that weren't necessary to almost fill a quarter of cutscenes. Now, obviously that's not actually the case. I doubt they sat there and said, how can we make this cutscene longer? But it feels like that at times, and that beginning intro drags just a little bit because of it. I think that should have been really streamlined and looked at, especially considering that you're wanting to get them out into the open world as much as possible, because that's what they've bought the game for. And that's kind of all that I have on story. Generally, I'm enjoying the story so far. The story isn't necessarily the main selling point of this game, obviously, but the fantasy that it kind of encapsulates because of the story, the expeditionary quality and such like, it is kind of important to have that marry with the gameplay. And I think it parts it very much does. Sadly, at others it doesn't, and I think that's the problem that Pokemon has here with their stories and the way they're delivering them. Regarding the aesthetics of the game, there's been a lot of contention. A lot of people are saying that it's poor. Others are saying it's expected of a Pokemon game, and some are saying that's not an excuse. And I do think there's a mid-ground here. Despite the negativity surrounding the aesthetics of Legends Arceus, there are actually some good points. First of all, the zones are actually fun and engaging. The way they've been designed promotes exploration, and that's really important and really exciting. If a zone looks pretty and you want to see things and you want to go to a certain mountaintop, or you want to see what that Pokemon's doing up in the air, those things are what these games are about, especially when you're dealing with an open world. And yeah, I think they did really well in selling these zones and kind of putting you and immersing you in them at the same time. This is very much true in Jubilife Village. The expanding and changing is really enjoyable when you see a new house being made, or like the Bidoof coming in, or the Geodude that you caught for someone, or the Wurmple you caught for someone. That's really fun because you feel like you're populating this village. And whilst I'd like to see more of that, I think it was a really good start in kind of making you feel more impactful upon the Pokemon world that you're actually, experiencing. Pastures were also a really good part of this. The fact that your box is no longer a box and a PC, and that you actually get to see all the Pokemon out in the world, was very reminiscent of Ash keeping all of his Pokemon at Professor Oak's lab. That was very cool and very exciting. I wish that you could go in and kind of interact with these Pokemon, but generally speaking, it's a really cool idea and really nice to see them there in the village. The new Pokemon have also been done quite well. I'm really happy with the noble Pokemon, for example, Weirdeer and, Cleavor, etc. and so on. They're really cool. The introduction of regional start evolutions is also fun. I think that they're getting a little bit too much flack. I really do like the way these Hisuian variants look. There are a few exceptions, of course. The origin forms for certain Pokemons that I won't mention don't look particularly fantastic, but generally speaking, very happy with the new Pokemon and the new designs for all the Pokemon. There are some bad points, however, and these are really important points, and this is where I think a lot of the issues with the game are coming from right now. Firstly, there's a really poor loading of Pokemon at distance. Their frames drop, and you see like essentially 2 or 3 movements of, for example, Staravia's wings at a distance, and it takes you out of the game. When you're seeing the frame rate of those Pokemon in the distance drop, almost to allow the game to keep running, you kind of almost feel like you're being pulled out of it because these Pokemon aren't there when you're not looking. They're there as soon as you move into the area, which technically they are there despite that, but it makes you feel as if they aren't. Poor shading as well is also a big part. Shadows are very blocky, and on top of that, there's a lot of pieces of scenery that look somewhat botched because of that. They don't look as dynamic as they should. Clouds are very much part of that. They don't look right on the landscape at points. They look almost kind of, it's hard to describe, but they look off. Though, again, as some people have said, and I do think this is a point to consider, this is a Pokemon game, and on top of that, it's a Nintendo game. Nintendo has never made a particularly graphically heavy game. The only perhaps exception might be Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild is why I think there's so much issue around Pokemon looking as sort of low detail as it is, because essentially for Nintendo at least, Breath of the Wild is the only real comparison that you can make here between Pokemon and another game of Nintendo's. So I think that's why Nintendo have kind of fumbled the bag a little bit on this one, because they've made such a stellar game in Breath of the Wild previously that all eyes were going to be on Pokemon Legends to be like or better than Breath of the Wild, and in parts it wasn't, especially graphically. Now onto the most important bit, in my opinion, gameplay. In regards to what's good about the gameplay, I think this is a really good move for the franchise. It shows them trying to step out of their bounds, trying new genres for Pokemon, trying new ideas for Pokemon. The Legends style, personally, I could see becoming a thing way down the line. I would love to see a Galar version of Legends where it's more medieval and that you go around and you're dealing with like houses, for example, and there's some kind of war brewing or something like that. Or maybe even that's a potential game that you could see, the Pokemon War that we've been alluded to over years. There are a lot of narrative points in the past of Pokemon that could still be used to great effect within certain games, and the fact that they haven't been used yet is kind of telling of a stagnance, and I'm hoping that Legends Arceus shakes Pokemon and the Pokemon Company out of doing the same thing again, and that this might be a new venture for them, a new kind of almost franchise within a franchise that they could run with. And expanding on that, I think this gameplay delivers the best Pokemon fantasy that we've gotten so far. It allows for a deeper interaction with both the lore and world of Pokemon. Often it seems like we're kind of kept at a distance, but in this game we're right in the center of the action. For all of it, we decide our adventure, we decide where we go, we decide which Pokemon we interact with. We're not forced into a certain path because there's only a few paths to take. These whole zones are open to us. It feels a lot more like the anime, which is a weird thing to say because it becomes a situation where what came first, the chicken or the egg? Should the games emulate the anime, or should the anime emulate the games? Either way, this is a much more realistic kind of adaptation of, you know, things we see in the movies and the anime that we haven't seen before. You know, the ability to catch Pokemon unawares and stuff like that, stuff that would realistically happen, but that we can't have in a simple turn-based game, such as the original Pokemon games, and you know, the continual use of that kind of style for Pokemon. Another thing that really changed up the dynamic of this game is the crafting. Being able to decide what kind of Pokeballs you want and what kind of reason you need them for, and as well as that, other items to help enable you to catch Pokemon in alternate ways to fighting them was great. You know, being able to use smoke bombs to get near a Luxray and catch him, that was brilliant. That was really exciting. I love that. That's a memorable moment. That's an exciting moment. I will probably talk about that in the future and be like, hey, I can't believe I did that. That was so cool. So being able to have different kind of experiences with Pokemon is exactly what this gameplay does right. And it's generated so many memes and so much art and so much interest, and that's what's good about this. There's a distinct difference in this game compared to games before it. You can't say that Legends Arceus is a kind of regurgitation of the same game again, because it's not. Is it a perfect new game in the Pokemon genre? No, it does have its faults, but it's trying to be something different, and that's something that I think we should really acknowledge and accept and kind of praise. Contrary to that, there are some points to discuss gameplay wise that I don't like. First of all, bag storage. Now, even when you've maxed out your bag or taken it as high as you wish, you still will find yourself more than not being stuck with a full bag. Now, I understand that any game, most games, you will have a full bag eventually because of encumbrance or something or another. But this feels really premature. You barely gotten through the first zone and feel like your bag is just bursting at the seams already, which personally I find annoying, especially because, you know, this game relies so much more on items than perhaps some other games where you might keep gear because you need 3 or 4 sets of armor that you change out and you can put away for a while. You can't put away certain Pokeballs because what if you need a feather ball, or what if you need a heavy ball, or what if you need a great ball? You need all these types of balls because it just makes sense to have them. So it's kind of hard in this situation to be like, okay, the limited storage is understandable because it's actually kind of infuriating. It kind of hinders gameplay rather than promotes it. One that I actually really don't like, and it's something that I didn't like in Sword and Shield, and I don't like it here. And whilst I'm enjoying Arceus, and I did enjoy Sword and Shield and all of that good stuff, I am still disappointed that we're not getting a full Pokédex anymore. Now, I understand that this game will be very hard to do that in, and I understand that over time we might get some DLC for Legends Arceus. But right now it's kind of almost annoying to be given the task early in the game to quote-unquote find all Pokemon and be unable to do that because 250 Pokemon are in the game when really there's about 1,000 at this point. And frankly, that's something that I think Pokemon needs to look at going forward. You know, if you're going to make a game that's open world and based on catching all the Pokemon numerous times, and literally that's the premise of the game, even more so than just the gotta catch them all tag, I think you need to add as many Pokemon as you can, obviously without oversaturating it. But, you know, I think the premise of the game needs to take kind of almost precedence in a way. One that I found very weird was the inability to walk with a Pokemon or kind of more deeply interact with the Pokemon themselves. You know, we've had walking with Pokemon as a feature in many of the mainline series of games. And so I found it really weird that it wasn't in this game, which is all about expedition, all about exploration. And the fact that your Pokemon is usually out with you anyway, I don't see why they couldn't have done that I think it kind of was a missed opportunity, especially again, as this is kind of a frontier world. It feels almost sensible to have a Pokemon almost watching over you or guarding you at all times. Again, this falls under the same category. The fact that we have no breeding in the game is very annoying. It feels again like that would be a peak thing that they would be doing for research in the region, learning Pokemon's behavioral habits, how they mate, how they create eggs, what those eggs can do in terms of alpha Pokemon, which would have been very interesting. And yeah, I feel like it's a missed opportunity. I feel like it could have been a very different way of the egg system becoming an important part of the storyline. But, you know, maybe that'll be something, again, in a DLC down the line. Overall, guys, I'm really enjoying Legends Arceus, and I hope you guys are too. There are some issues, but I'm hoping that generally these will be fixed going forward with maybe more Arceus games, and if not, integrated into the mainline games going forward as well. And with that, I'm going to go play Legends Arceus on Twitch. If you guys want to join a future live stream to see some Pokemon content, or even some other games, check the link in the description below. Otherwise, please share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.